something great. I'm in love with the shape of you.
Assalamualaikum and hi to our fellow friends and to our lecturer Sir Adam. So today, my group members will be present and explain about the existence of contract between Madam Useful and Useless. So the first runner-up will be me, AMINAH SYAKIRAH BINTI AHMAD TOPIK. The second one will be ISKANDAR ZULQARNAIN. The third one will be Muhammad FADZLI. Next, we have Muhammad QIMYHAZIQ, and the last one will be NURAIN FIRZANAH.
Okay, the first one is the consideration. So, based on the scenario, the issue in this case is whether Useless can take legal action against his mother for breach of contract. If we look on the scenario, Useless has entered into an agreement with his mother for providing him 1,000 as his monthly expenses and a single story house for him to living in order to further his study. So after the 6 months, his mother has stopped providing him that two things because both of them had a misunderstanding, and after that his mother made a decision to stop providing that two things to him. So, Useless can take legal action against his mother.
Based on law, the scenario is under the Section 2D Contracts Act 1950, which is the consideration in law of contract. So, because the consideration is the price of which one party pays to buy the promise or the others, it means something that is given in return for something else. So the Madam Useful give monthly payment 1,000 ringgit and the single story terrace house to the Useless to encourage Useless to further their studies. So the classification of consideration in this scenario is the executory consideration, which is it is the exchange of promises to perform the acts in the future. So the exchange is the Madam Useful give the monthly payment and the house to the Useless, and the Useless further their studies to have the monthly payment and the house. So that's all.
I would like to talk about the case between Useless and his mother, Madam Useful. The issue between them is whether Useless can take legal action against his mother for breach of contract. The agreement between him and his mother, Madam Useful, is his mother agreed to give an allowance of 3,000 ringgit per month and a single-story terrace house to further his study near his hometown. But after 6 months, his mother stopped giving him the allowance and asked him to leave the house where he is living in. Useless is frustrated and wants to take a legal action against his mother. Useless can take a legal action against his mother because the agreement is valid in the first place because there is consideration between two parties. If the consideration of both parties is not mentioned in the contract will be void and cannot take legal action against his mother for breach of contract. In conclusion, the contract is valid as there is consideration between two parties, which is Useless coming back to his hometown to further his study and his mother give an allowance of 3,000 a month and a single-story house for him to live in.
Okay, so next is application in consideration. Based on the law, this is an exchange promise from Madam Useful to Useless to perform in the future under the executory consideration. The reason is because Madam Useful offer expenses 1,000 for 1 year and terrace house to Useless if he go back to Ipoh to continue study at KPM Ipoh. However, after 6 months, they have misunderstanding and Madam Useful want to stop give expenses and ask Useless to get out from the house. Once Madam Useless stop the promise or giving expenses, Madam Useful has break the promise and the contract are void.
For the terms of consideration, it can be defined under Section 2D Contract Act 1950 as when, at the desire of the promisor, the promises or any other person has done, or from doing, or promises to do or to abstain from doing it. Under Section 26 Contract Act 1950, the agreement that made without consideration is considered void. So, based on the situation between Madam Useful and Useless, Useless can take legal action toward his mother for breach of contract. Okay. Madam Useful offered to provide him Rm 1,000 as his monthly expenses and a single-story terrace house if he would agree to start further his studies in accountancy in KPM Ipoh. But soon after the 6 months of his return, they had a little misunderstood, and his mother, Madam Useful, stopped giving the expenses and asked him to leave the house that he was living in. So, both Useless and Madam Useful made an agreement which they agreed and valid one. The contract become valid is because of they entered the agreement as an offerer, which is Madam Useful, and offerer, which is Useless.
Okay, the second is intention to create legal relation. Okay, in this scenario, the issue in this case whether Useless can take legal action against his mother for failing to perform her obligation to him. It means that his mother has promised in the contract they have made to give Useless 1,000 ringgit as his monthly expenses and providing him a single story house for living in order to further his study. But after the 6 months, his mother has stopped giving that two things to Useless because both of them had a misunderstanding. So Useless made a decision to take legal action against his mother.
So, intention to create legal relations. So, the agreement itself does not create a binding contract. It must be intended to be legally enforceable. So, based on law in this scenario, this can categorized as the family agreement. So, the legal relation cannot be taken in this scenario because it's a family agreement. So, like for example, such as the Useless don't have intention to create legal action to the mother because that is mother, so they cannot take a legal relation because they have no intention to create it. So, but however, the presumption of the non-existent intention to create legal relations in social, domestic and family agreement may be rebutted. So, in this case, the family agreement may be rebutted.
The intention to create legal relation itself simply means the party to the agreement are ready to face any implication if they fail to perform the terms under the contract. As an example, in Balfour vs. Balfour in 1919, the defendant was a civil servant, served in session in Ceylon, Sri Lanka, and went on leave in England. He was promised to pay his wife an allowance of £30 until he returns to Ceylon. The defendant defaulted the promise and the wife sued him for breach of contract. There was no legally binding agreement because the parties did not intend to be bound by legal consequence. Based on the above law, the case is under the family agreements. The reason being, Madam Useful offered Useless 1,000 ringgit as his monthly expenses and a single-story terrace house is useless, return to Ipoh and further his study. Therefore, after 6 months, the case was in a bad condition when there was a misunderstanding between him and Madam Useful that his mother stopped giving the expenses and asked him to leave the house. However, the case and family agreements may be reviewed. In conclusion, there was no legally binding agreement because the parties did not intend to be bound by legal consequence. The law treats family agreements as agreements without intention to create legal action. Therefore, failure to fulfill the promise will not be subject to legal action.
Okay, so we proceed with application and intention to create legal action. Okay, based on law, this is a family agreement. Why we call it family agreement? Because Madam Useful offered to his own son Useless. So Useless cannot take legal action to his mom because this is family agreement. If Madam Useful cannot fulfill the agreement, Useless cannot take legal action to his mom. Okay, however, the case in family agreement may be reviewed because this is a family agreement, so they can settle by the both party.
In terms of intention to create legal relation, it means that the parties to the agreement are ready to face any consequences if they fail to perform the terms under the contract. There are two presumptions on the existence of intention to create legal relations that can be concluded from the case, which is social domestic family agreement, and second one is business agreements. The situation between Useless and Madam Useful can be classified as social domestic family agreements because it involves family relationship in the case and it treats them as agreement without intention to create legal relations. Based on the explanation before, Useless did not receive his expenses, which is RM1,000, and the single-story terrace house he living in anymore, as promised by his mother, if he returned to further his study in accountancy in KPM Ipoh, because of some misunderstood between them. However, the presumption of non-existence in intention to create legal relation in social, domestic, and family agreement can be rebutted. So overall, it can be said that the agreements are not intended to be legally enforceable, and failure to fulfill the promise and will not be suspected to legal action.